when we talk about what women truly want from men, one of the most fundamental things, perhaps the first thing, is stability. And I don't mean stability in the shallow sense, as in just having a steady income or a predictable schedule. I mean stability in the deeper psychological sense. The ability to stand firm when life becomes unpredictable, the capacity to bring order to chaos, and the strength to remain grounded when everything else is shaking. Women are acutely sensitive. They can detect instability in a man almost immediately, and it unsettles them because deep in their psyche, they are asking one question: can I trust him to remain steady when the storms come? And think about it. Life itself is difficult, unpredictable, and often brutally unfair. We are constantly confronted by suffering, by setbacks, by things we did not expect. And if a man collapses under that weight, if he becomes volatile, emotionally erratic, or unreliable, then he becomes another source of chaos in her life, rather than a refuge from it. And no woman, at least no woman who is serious about building a meaningful life, wants to add unnecessary chaos to her world. Stability, then, is not about comfort, it is about trust. It is the silent signal that says, I am here. I will not vanish when things get hard. I will not run when the pressure rises. I will not turn on you when the world feels overwhelming. And notice, this isn't about being emotionless or robotic. That's a caricature of masculinity that is both false and destructive. To be stable does not mean you never cry, never struggle, never admit weakness. What it means is that you don't let those things master you. You might be wounded, but you don't allow bitterness to corrode your soul. You might feel fear, but you don't let fear dictate your every decision. You might get angry, but you don't let anger turn into cruelty or violence. Stability means integrating those emotions in such a way that they don't control you. They serve you. That's what makes a man trustworthy, and that trust is what makes him attractive at the deepest possible level. Oh, now why does this matter so much? Because a woman isn't just choosing a man for the present moment. She is choosing the possibility of a future. She is, in a very real sense, evaluating whether you can be the kind of man who can handle the weight of responsibility over time. Children may come, financial struggles may arise, illness may strike, friends may betray. And when those things happen, and they will you crumble, or will you find a way to remain upright, to be a foundation rather than a fault line? Stability is a man's silent promise that he will not collapse when the house of life starts shaking. You might think of this almost archetypally. In mythology, the hero is not simply the strongest or the most cunning. He is the one who can enter chaos, confront the dragon, and return with something of value. He brings order where there was disorder. He carries something back that makes life better for those around him. Stability is, in a sense, the lived-out version of that heroic archetype. It is a man's capacity to continually reestablish order, to confront the inevitable chaos of existence, and to not let it destroy him or the people who are depending on him. And you can see the opposite everywhere. Men who drink themselves into oblivion when pressure mounts. Men who explode in anger at the smallest provocation. Men who disappear emotionally, numbing themselves with distraction, leaving their partner to carry the entire weight of the relationship. That is instability. That is chaos embodied. And it erodes trust so quickly that even love itself cannot stand under its weight. Because love contrary to modern illusions, is not just an emotion, it is a commitment made sustainable by trust. Without stability, trust disintegrates. Without trust, love suffocates. But here's the challenge. Stability doesn't just appear. It is forged, it is cultivated over time through discipline, through responsibility, through the daily choice to do what is necessary rather than what is easy. You can't fake stability for long. You either are a man who can hold his ground in a storm or you aren't. And if you aren't, you have work to do. That might mean confronting your own inner chaos, your addictions, your lack of discipline, your unprocessed anger. It might mean building habits that anchor you, waking up at the same time, taking care of your health, managing your finances, keeping your word. It might mean setting boundaries with yourself so that your emotions don't turn into weapons against the people you love. Stability is the fruit of self-mastery. And without self-mastery, you cannot offer stability to anyone else. And here's the paradox. When a man becomes stable, he doesn't just benefit women. He benefits himself because stability is not just attractive, it's deeply fulfilling. A stable man knows who he is. He doesn't need to constantly prove himself to the world. He can move through life with a kind of quiet strength, a confidence that is not loud or arrogant, but deeply rooted. That kind of man doesn't just win the admiration of women. He earns the respect of men, and more importantly, he respects himself. Yeah. So if you want to understand why stability is one of the first and most essential things women look for in men, understand this. It is not superficial. It is not trivial. It is primal. It is existential. It is a reflection of something every human being longs for. The presence of order in the midst of chaos, the assurance that the world will not completely fall apart if one person stands strong, be that man, becomes stable, not for applause, not even for her, but because that is the kind of man worth being. Because at the end of the day, a woman doesn't just want to love you, she wants to be able to lean on you. And if you cannot stand firm, she cannot stand with you. You know, strength is one of those words that we throw around as if its meaning is self-evident. But when you stop and look closely, you realize that strength can take on very different forms. There is the brute strength of the body, the capacity to dominate, to overpower, to bend things to your will. And then there is another kind of strength altogether, the strength that does not seek to control, but to protect. And that difference makes all the difference in the world, especially in relationships between men and women. You know, a woman does not simply want a man who is strong in the physical sense. That might be impressive at first glance, but it fades quickly if it isn't accompanied by something deeper. What she desires, often without even being able to articulate it, is a man whose strength creates safety, a man whose strength brings a kind of sanctuary rather than a prison. There is a paradox here. Strength is attractive precisely when it is not used for domination, when it becomes about control, about imposing one's will on others, it becomes tyrannical. And tyranny, even if wrapped in the appearance of masculinity, is repulsive at the core. You know, think of it like this. Strength without compassion is brutality, and compassion without strength is impotence. The real art is in bringing those two together, so that strength becomes a channel through which care and responsibility flow. It's the ability to say, I have power, but my power exists so that you feel safe, not so that you feel small. That's the kind of strength that resonates with women because it mirrors something archetypal, like the tree that stands tall and unshakable, not to overshadow everything around it, but to provide shade, shelter, and rootedness. Right. Now, this is not just some romantic notion. It is psychological. Women are biologically wired to assess whether a man's strength is a threat or a protection. On an unconscious level, she's asking, if I align myself with this man, will his power be used against me or for me? And that question has, because if she senses that his strength is merely a tool for self gratification or control, her trust will evaporate. But if she senses that his strength is anchored in a kind of moral responsibility, that he uses it to carry burdens, to stand firm against adversity, to shield rather than to dominate, then her trust deepens. And with it, her attraction. You know, you can see this in the smallest of gestures, the way a man listens without dismissing, the way he holds his temper. When provoked, the way he steps in when something threatens, not with showmanship, but with calm assurance. These are demonstrations of strength, not the noisy, flamboyant kind, but the quiet strength that radiates stability. It is that kind of presence that makes a woman feel she can exhale, that she does not have to be on guard all the time. And that, in turn, is what allows intimacy to flourish. Because intimacy cannot thrive where there is fear. It can only grow in the soil of trust. But let's look even deeper. Why is this dynamic so important? Because men, whether they realize it or not, embody potential chaos. Masculine energy has the capacity to create or destroy, to build or to ruin. That is the dual nature of power. The task of a man is to discipline his strength so that it becomes creative rather than destructive. And that is not easy. It requires restraint. It requires humility. It requires the awareness that just because you can doesn't mean you should. Real strength is not measured by how much force you can exert, but by how much force you can hold back when it isn't needed. In many ways, it's like the ocean. The ocean is unimaginably powerful. It can crush ships, tear down cliffs, drown entire cities. But at the same time, it sustains life, carries trade, nourishes the planet. Its power is not evil. It's simply raw. Whether it becomes destructive or life-giving depends on how it is approached and contained. A man's strength is like that. Untamed, it can devastate. Disciplined, it becomes the source of life, protection, and continuity. This is why women are not drawn to weakness, disguised as kindness. They are not interested in men who are agreeable to the point of being spineless. Because beneath the surface, weakness is just as dangerous as tyranny. A weak man cannot protect, cannot endure, cannot take responsibility. He crumbles under pressure, leaving the woman to carry the weight of both their lives. And that is not attractive. It is exhausting. What is attractive is strength tempered by wisdom. The man who can fight but does not seek fights. The man who has the capacity for aggression but directs it toward defending what matters, rather than inflating his ego. The man who carries himself with quiet authority, not because he's trying to dominate, but because he knows who he is and what he stands for. That is the kind of strength that women trust, because it is strength that brings life instead of chaos. And here's the beautiful irony. When strength is used this way, it doesn't only serve women, it serves the man himself, because it gives him a direction for his power, a moral framework for his actions. Without that, strength is a liability, a force that will eventually turn against him. With it, strength becomes his greatest asset, something that draws respect from others and peace within himself. All right, so if you want to understand what women mean when they say they want strength in a man, look beyond the superficial. It's not about muscles or wealth or domination. It's about whether your strength makes her feel safe or afraid, whether it builds trust or destroys it. whether it creates a home where love can grow or a cage where it withers. And if there is one thing that reveals itself again and again in the lives of men and women, is that direction matters. A man without purpose drifts. And when he drifts, he doesn't just lose himself, he leaves everyone around him lost as well. Women, perhaps more than men realize, are finely attuned to this. They can sense when a man has no vision for his life, when he is simply existing from one day to the next, waiting for things to happen rather than shaping them. And while he may still be attractive in some superficial ways, eventually, the lack of direction begins to show because it creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, trust and admiration begin to collapse. Purpose then is not some optional extra. It is essential. It is the very axis around which a man's life turns. And here's the interesting thing. Purpose does not necessarily mean having everything figured out. It doesn't mean you must know every step of your future in advance. What it means is that you are oriented towards something higher than yourself, that you have a sense of movement, of striving, of becoming. Women do not need men to be perfect. They need men to be moving, men to be growing, men to be living with intentionality. Because when a man has direction, he carries with him a kind of energy, a sense of meaning that radiates outward, giving structure and clarity to the relationship itself. You know, you can think of it almost like a journey. Imagine two travelers. One is wandering aimlessly, unsure where he is going, easily distracted by every detour. The other has a destination in mind. He might not know the entire path, but he knows the direction. Now, which traveler would you feel safer following? Which journey would inspire more confidence? The answer is obvious, and that's precisely how women experience men with or without vision. The man with no purpose drags his partner into his confusion, while the man with direction offers her the possibility of a shared future, one shaped by meaning rather than randomness. You know, philosophically speaking, this ties into the very nature of human existence. We are not merely creatures of survival. We are creatures of significance. We do not just want to live, we want to live for something. Without that, life quickly descends into despair, into the sense that nothing matters. And that despair leaks into relationships. A man without vision slowly suffocates love, because love cannot thrive in a vacuum of meaning. But a man with purpose, even if he is imperfect in countless other ways, offers something profound: hope. And hope is the seedbed of love.